Hi, Forrest here. Today on the show, we have William Akers. He's an author, a teacher, and a filmmaker, and he has some invaluable advice that he's going to share with us to help you make and write a better movie. Now, let's roll tape.
This episode brought to you by Spoof Dance Film Festival. Make parody commercials and bring the funny.
Thanks for joining me, William.
My pleasure.
All right, let's talk about some points on some mistakes that filmmakers make when they're writing the script and when they're shooting the movie. For example, casting characters of the wrong age,
That's
unfilmable.
one that you wouldn't believe. I see that. You would think it'd be kind of a no-brainer, but it does happen. When people are in their 20s and they're making movies, often their only go-to people for actors are their friends, and they're all going to probably be in their 20s. And just because you're in your 20s and you've written a role for someone in their 40s or 50s, you can't put someone young playing an older person. And I see it not all the time, but I've seen it often enough to where it's a problem. I had students, filmmakers in a class of mine, they wrote a screenplay about a woman who was having an affair with one of her professors. And they couldn't find anybody 50 years old that wanted to be in the movie. And so they decided, well, we won't change the script any because we've got the script and we don't have time to rewrite it, or we don't want to rewrite it. And so they put one of their buddies in the role as a college professor. And in order to make him look like a college professor, they gave him a bow tie. And that did not really, to me, make him look 50 years old. It was one of the low points of my teaching career, giving notes on that particular film.
And I've seen that done before, and I've actually been in movies where that's happened. So it's
how can you write something for somebody 40 years old, not planning on finding someone 40 years old to be in it?
All right, and now let's take a step back from that. Like, aside from miscasting, one of your points is have a script. And I've seen it, and I'm sure you've seen it, where people go and shoot a movie without a script. Now, can you talk a little bit about that?
Again, it just amazes me how anyone could think you could go out and make a movie with not at least a shot list. I mean, Keaton and Chaplin they didn't have dialogue, but they had a list of what they were going to do. And you go out and you make your schedule and you figure out when you need to start and when you're going to finish. And you need to get done on time because presumably you're not paying people to be in your movie. And so the only thing you have is your ability to be efficient. And you cannot be efficient if you're just making it up as you go along. That's one problem, efficiency. The other thing is your movie's going to be terrible. I mean, maybe Scorsese can go out and make a 10-minute film with no script in an afternoon or a weekend, but we're not him. And it's just a recipe for disaster if you don't have a script. You're just muddling along and you're going to lose the confidence of everyone on your crew and especially your actors.
And the script doesn't necessarily mean dialogue. It could be the action or the dialogue, what the actor's got to do, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, if you've got a silent film, it's just what happens. If it's not silent, you have dialogue, you have to write the dialogue. They can't make it up on their own.
Mm-hmm. Now, you talked about a volunteer crew. A lot of student films and a lot of indie films have volunteer crews. And I know you have some thoughts on feeding the crew. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I really believe that you need to, it doesn't matter how little money you have to find a way to feed your crew really well. They need to be excited when it comes to lunchtime and or dinner or whatever it is. And you have to make sure they eat well because they're happy to do it for Queen and Country, but they're not going to want to eat cruddy food. And anybody over about 35 is not going to be delighted by pizza.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good point. What are some suggestions that you'd give to like the regular indie filmmaker for feeding a crew?
Well, you got to have good craft services all day long, and it can't just be bagel and peanut butter. You've got to have good food at lunch and dinner, nourishing, something warm. I mean, the union rules, if you're shooting a union film, you have to serve a hot meal. And one thing that I would have my students do is they would go out and get free meals or partial meals from local restaurants, who would then get credit in the film. You say, could you feed us half a lunch? I've got a crew of 20, I need 10 lunches or 5 lunches or coffee. And you could cobble together an entire shoot's worth of free food, and then the actors are eating really good food. Or learn to cook.
Now there's one, learning to cook, and sometimes perhaps even getting one of the actors' parents or one of the actors even maybe to help you out with that.
Yeah, my wife was a caterer long ago. When she'd do films, the people were so excited to see her coming that they would stand in the front yard of the house where they were shooting and applaud when she drove around the corner because they knew they were about to get a great meal.
All right. What other points would you offer either the student filmmaker or the indie filmmaker?
Boy, just be professional with people's time. When you don't have a lot of money to trade people for their time or no money to trade them, then you have to be incredibly professional with how you approach what you're doing so that you start on time, you break for lunch, you have a half hour for lunch, and you finish on time. Because people have lives, they're there to help you get your vision if you're the director of the film. And the way they're going to be happy giving you that time is if you're respectful of that time. You cannot shoot eons long days and go, oh, I'm young and don't know what I'm doing, so please stay with me here. And you can ask people to do the heroic thing every now and then, but not on a regular basis because they're going to get sick of it. They have other things to do other than take care of your vision.
Okay, now the movie's done. Let's talk about pre or post-production. Basically, the end of the movie, a copy of the movie. I've seen this a lot of times. People, you know, it's all exciting when you're shooting the film, and then you never see the finished movie. Some advice on that.
Ooh, deliver. You've got, my students would have to give their actors the DVD at the end of the shoot, and I would not give them a grade at the end of the semester until I had spoken to every actor and found that every actor had gotten the DVD. I mean, if you think you're going to make a great movie at the beginning and it turns out to be horrible by the end, that doesn't mean you don't owe them a DVD, even if you think the movie's no good now. You've got to do what you said you're going to do.
Mm-hmm. And credit everybody. You see that an awful lot where spats happen, and so, well, I'm not going to credit this guy.
You got to act like a grown-up. I mean, I just gave a tour of our building at school to some 13-year-old kids, and I said, you don't want to act like a 9-year-old. You want to act like a grown-up. And I've seen grown people acting like 9-year-olds, which is just not good. You have to be professional. You want these people to work with you again. And the only way they're ever going to work with you again is if you do exactly what you told them you were going to do on the front end.
Okay, and one last topic I'd like your feelings on, and I know your feelings on this because I've read your list, and it's in the news, crew safety. Let's talk a little bit about crew safety and how underestimated that can be at times.
Well, the problem with the beginning filmmakers, they don't know what's dangerous. And so therefore they can get themselves in very serious trouble very, very quickly, especially with electricity. Electricity, vehicles, ladders, those are the most difficult areas on a set, and things can go wrong very fast. And that's why you have to have an assistant director who is aware of safety issues and can watch for those things before, during the shoot. Because somebody's got to be paying attention to it, and generally it's assistant director. You just have to be aware that everybody has to be safe. It's not worth anyone getting hurt. It's only a movie. And if you copy things that you see in real movies, you don't understand how they did it safely. If it looks dangerous, it was not. And you've got to be very, very careful. Okay,
and all of these tips can be found in your book. Let's do a plug for your book.
I've written a book called Your Screenplay Sucks. I'm working on Your Screenplay Still Sucks because not enough people bought the first book, so they're still writing bad scripts. And I'm working on a book on short films.
All right, William, I want to thank you for joining me on Rolling Tape.
My pleasure. Thank you.